We have 9 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Was the meeting properly noticed?
Yes, it was.
Clerk will take roll.
All members are present.
Okay, we have the agenda before us. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Scott P, second by Supervisor Grabarski. Any discussion or questions on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. The agenda is approved. We have the minutes from August 7th. Motion to approve by Supervisor Grabarski, second by Supervisor Rick Pease. Any discussion or question on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Minutes from August 7th are approved. We'll allow public participation as we go through the agenda. Any correspondence?
None.
Okay. And I see the treasurer's here. We'll go move to the treasurer's report.
Does anybody have any questions on the report?
When she's here, we don't have questions.
Yeah. I'm gonna take that as a good thing. Oh, you're so sad.
Okay. We'll move on then. So we have the IT report.
Morning, everybody. Are there any questions on my report?
I do.
Supervisor Scott Pease.
Move dispatch, investigating new office, set up new investigator equipment and vacated office. Where is that located?
The dispatch investigator lieutenant, Kyle Johnson, moved from his office that was one of the 4 offices in the hallway where the investigators currently are. He moved up to the front office where the fiscal support services manager was. And then the new investigator took over his office. So now currently all 4 investigators are in that one hallway by the interview room.
That was because we put on another investigator, I think.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the one other thing to note too is the September 5th change for GCS land nav catalyst was moved back to next Monday to no fault of our own.
Okay.
One more question.
Yeah, Supervisor Scott Pease. I don't know if you have your mic on. So for those in the audience that might be on Zoom. So thank you.
My other question is employee resignation, is that position posted? Are we filling it?
That position is posted until the 13th and we are gonna fill it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Director. We'll move on to Human Resources report.
Are there any questions on my report?
Seeing none. Place here. What's in? Next, we got Corp Council's report. So.
Good morning. Any questions?
Any update on the legal action?
Yes,
Since yesterday, right?
our hearing for yesterday, the court rescheduled it to the 28th. Judge Bonnet needed more time. She had only set it aside for 15 minutes, thinking that she'd be able to respond to all the written motions and briefs that were filed, but she has further questions, so she needed an hour. So it's now scheduled towards September 28th. So hopefully we'll have it resolved by then.
Any other questions for Corp Council?
Your new person started?
We'll start at the end of the month, September 25th.
Oh, it says August on there.
Excuse me. Yes.
Typo.
Yeah, that's why I need a new person.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, move on to the county clerk's report.
Any questions?
Man, you'd think it'd be a Monday morning as quiet as everybody is today, so. Okay, we'll move on then to county managers monthly report, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I'm going to start out with appreciations and Sarah Manning for stepping up after the July weather event and kind of go into that in detail. Melissa Powell for her assistance to the airport manager, Robert Brown, and that's also covered there. To two board members for volunteering at the fair, Crivolio and Paler. To Dustin Grant, he received accolades from a citizen who sent me an email about Dusty's involvement in spearheading a raising order. On to capital projects, Veterans Memorial. Bill Reynolds is still trying to connect with the appropriate personnel to get this thing rolling again. Roof, looks like the end of November. Fairgrounds paving to begin September 18th or the week of. Parks Wi-Fi is just a repeat from last month, so no change in that area. County Highway M, I have two call outs there. The second one pertains to a binder layer, so I wasn't really sure what binder meant, so I got a little snapshot of a photo that maybe is helpful to understand what's being described there. And looks like there's going to be some work in 23, but the work plan is actually a 24 on the second bullet point. And then I touch on County Highway CC, and that is also 2024. Under happenings, the city splash pad, we're in the MOU process right now. So that is progressing through the proper channels at this point. The Adams County Fair, I have 3 sections in that. One is the canine demonstration. I was there for that and took some photos. I found that very interesting. And it was a crowd pleaser, if you can imagine. On to page 4, the junior deputies. That was also, that was uplifting time watching the tots get into the vehicle. So again, maybe we have some future deputies in our future, sparking interest now for later. And then I touch on that I do this lunch every year for the department heads. This is my treat. So not county funds, it's my treat to them just as a thank you for all their hard work throughout the year. We had our 2023 County Board Supervisor Retreat, which now marks the second one since the inception last year. To me, it was a successful event. Kind of went long, 7:30 p.m. Kind of a long night. Page 5. Janet Leja is, she went to Monroe County and she there was a visit with the Department and Family Secretary Emily Amundsen there. I do have a couple of live links there if you want some more information about that event. Airport has some stuff going on. Robert's been working on a lot of projects, and the latest one here that happened in August was coming up with some signage out there. And so I gave you some information on that. What's on the horizon on page 6? We have the 23 department head retreat. So that's going to be September 28th at noon. So pretty much from noon until the end of the day, you're probably not going to be able to get hold of a department head. And the 2023 Education Day, that's scheduled for September 27th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's going to be at the Rosha Cree State Park. I have a lot of meetings, little miscellaneous meetings throughout the month there, but if you want to go to page 8, kind of touch on the TIFs. And you can see there's 2 TIFs in City of Adams that have a positive fund balance. You go over to the right, the TID fund balance, 2 positives, but then Friendship has 2 TIFs. They're in the negative. Not really sure what that means. I'm not even going to make a presumption. I didn't do a little bit of research on just what that means to have a negative TIF, because you can see they're getting ready to mature. 2024 is one of them. A large dollar amount there. Other than that, are there any questions on the report?
Cynthia, would you explain that fund balance deal again between the city and the village? And why they're so much different?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for clarification, we're talking about the TIFs, the tax incremental financing districts, the TIDs. Okay. Whenever there's a positive fund balance, that just means they had more revenues come in than expenses going out. So the increment comes in, tax increment. They didn't spend it. So that you have like a reserve, if you will. But when they project out in the future, so if you look at their balance sheet, it'll say that they're planning on spending that. So until it officially closes and they do a final audit, we don't know what the numbers are. But for now, I'm just kind of disclosing to you guys that there is a positive fund balance on the two and then the negative on the other two. So I don't know what that means. Usually when there's a reserve and it closes, it goes back out to the taxing districts. So any reserve is allocated back out. So what happens when there's a negative is my question. I'll look into it further.
And the two TIDs that are listed there for the city of Adams, it seems like those are up. So some of those properties should be coming onto the tax rolls then
Mm-hmm.
in this year and next year, it looks like, right?
Yeah, the thing that sparks it is the final audit.
Right. Supervisor Scott Pease?
I actually got two different questions. The first one is with the chamber. Have, you reviewed the finances that we give them and where it goes to?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I do have the chamber listed in my activities of meetings. So I do disclose there that we do fund 35,000 and I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I had touched on looking into our return on investment. So it's on my radar to look into that further.
And my other one is, a lot of us don't get around the courthouse here and I really couldn't tell you where some offices are right now and I'm a board member. I know there's another one today that got moved and where it is, or I really don't know. I know where the investigator offices were, but I don't know where he got relocated to. Is there a way that we can find out where everyone's offices are? And the other question is, who makes a determination when an office should be moved?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, two questions. One is how are you well informed about where everybody is placed, I suppose? We are working on an organizational chart. So if you pull up a department, you're gonna see their org chart. Perhaps what we can add to that, I'm looking at Kyle, perhaps what we can add to that is also a room number. Actually, it's Carol Wood. Carol Wood is kind of doing the org charts. So we can add their room number. That should help a little bit. Where's that? You're gonna have to see a bigger diagram to know exactly where that A230 or whatever is. And the second part, who makes the determination for usage of offices? I believe that falls under my authority, does it not? Okay. If there's construction involved, that's where a committee's involved.
That's my next question is, could you update the building committee? Because we're talking all the time about, offices and what we think are gonna go where, or what, if we're gonna build, what should go in those. I guess that would be helpful for them too.
Okay, noted.
No building and maybe even the property committee, right? I don't know. They have some stuff with building maintenance too, right?
We had talked about this reorganization of offices and whatnot in the building committee more so than it.
Yeah. Supervisor Grabarski?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. A floor plan, I would think would be in order, more so than I'm on. Is that,
Yeah, you are.
okay. A floor plan of some sort, I think would be better than a room number from the standpoint, and there's been some hesitation on getting some of that out there. Certainly, we don't need to know the jail, and that's, priority stuff that needs to stay in-house, but these other offices, if we can get some sort of building plan that, or not building plan, but floor plan that actually we can follow, I think I know the last one I got, we had a couple different 3 pages and it wasn't good. So I don't know if Bill can come up with something or that'd be nice. I agree with Scott on that.
Okay. Oh, Supervisor Rick Pease.
I'd like to go back to I'd like to go back to what Scott said about the chamber. I see what we spent last year. I'm assuming most of our money goes into a big pot and there's a budget devised, so I don't know if we necessarily know what our money is actually doing. But the changes in the chamber I've seen in the last 6 months to 8 months have been astounding compared to what it was. And for us to continue to fund them, I think it'd be a great idea to see where it goes from now on. As now I see articles in the paper every week. I hear somebody on the radio. I see people at events, and I hopefully, and I believe it will be continuing in the future like that. So I think our money's being utilized to bring Adams County to the forefront like it should be. Thank you.
Well, and I know a little of that history on the chamber is that we used to fund it. If we go back into the history of the chamber and where that was, there was I don't know if it was a $5,000 amount or whatever the dollar was. If we go back in the history, that's what we used to fund the chamber for. It might not be 5, it might be only 2 but then what happened is that when we had the Parks Department was doing tourism back in the day and having that fundraiser and attending those sports shows. And then, the Parks Director position was eliminated and we stopped doing the sports shows with the Parks Department. And we said, since we were spending that money in the Parks Department, we said, well, we can switch that money over if the chamber would agree to do those trade shows for us. And we said we could allocate that money based on that. So the history is that the chamber started doing that for us and we required them to actually show us the costs for that. And then we'd have that reimbursement. So that's where some of that money was coming from. And I shared that with Cynthia and I don't have the numbers in front of me. And if we want to see those numbers at some time, I mean, that history might be good for us to see when we get into the budget here, when we look at allocating those funds. So. But from my viewpoint, for the history, for those members that haven't been on as long, that's where that was. So if you're hearing anything about that, that's what we might have to go back and look at. So. Okay, anything else on the manager's report?
John?
Supervisor
Yes.
Kubarski?
Regarding our meeting, I don't know what we called it, but the meeting as a whole or whatever with Andy,
The retreat?
the retreat, I think it was a huge success with the amount of different questions that came up. I'm hoping that board members and especially the newer board members got a chance to get their questions answered and got some sort of guidance as you go forward. My compliments to the people that put that together. I thought it turned out very well.
Yeah, Supervisor Scott Pease?
I concur, just so the new members, I don't know if they're gonna view this, but Andy gives about, I don't know, probably 6, 7 classes at the WCA conference, and he's a very good speaker. He really knows what's going on, that if they get a chance, he's full of knowledge, and I suggest they should go.
Okay. Project status report? I guess anything to highlight? Finance Director?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The net new construction, when we pull that up, for the levy limit worksheet, so they round it. It was rounded to 2.42. It's actually 2.415. So that change was made on there, on that project status in regards to 2024 budget. 2022 audit, they sent over preliminary findings. As of right now, there's 1 finding. So are there any questions on the project status report?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add that I have a section there. It's called administration. I started putting it together, so I still have work to do to kind of give you a status of all the stuff that's going on with just my area too.
Okay. ARPA Work Group Monthly Report. Any updates there?
Yep, Mr. Chair. So the fiber projects by Marquette Adams, those are totally built out and are completed. And then I think we also paid out a little bit for the youth engagement and truancy issues in the month of August.
Okay. You have new construction on there. Is that, you already mentioned that? Or you just wanted to go over that, right?
Oh, for the next agenda item.
Yes.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I believe last month it was requested to view the net new construction numbers. So we just put this on as a agenda item. So this is the final net new construction numbers that were provided to us by the state. You can see it says 2.42, but it's actually 2.415.
Okay. Next, we'll go on to cost of living adjustment for 2024 wage scale. Finance director or county manager, who's going to cover that?
Mr. Chair.
Don't fight over it.
Yikes. Okay. So what this spreadsheet depicts is if you look at column C, I don't know if you can scroll up a little bit so you can get the heading. Okay. So that's the CPI in 2023 was 8.2. Over to the left is the actual wage increase that we did. So if you look down to the 2024, obviously we have some question marks. We have some recommendations, but wanted to kind of just explain this to you first. We see over to the right, then the current CPI is 4.9. That's a total for the 2 years at 13.1. We were at 4, so we're a little bit behind. So we know that there's a wage study that was started and then it was terminated. And with the wage study or whether we consider CPI, there's going to be an adjustment that we can afford and one that we may not be able to afford. So even if the wage study came back and said, oh, 13.1 or, to make up the difference, you have to be able to afford that and you have to be able to sustain it for years to come. So our recommendation, what we have already kind of worked on, I'm just throwing these numbers out. Don't lock me in. We started out with a 4%. Okay. That's what's on our books right now for the budget. We want to recommend the 4.9, which is the current year CPI. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Yep, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so the numbers that we're showing, we're only showing 2023 and 2024 because in 2022, we had aligned all the wage increases from 18 to 22 with Midwest CPI. So that's why we're only showing the 2 years. And with a 4.9% increase, I'm just pulling my spreadsheet up here. We have rough estimates for about how much that's going to end up costing for those. It's going to be, so from 2023 to 2024, budgeted wages is going to increase about $1 million, wages and benefits, about $1 million with that. So we get about
Not $1 million more total.
yeah, roughly about $1 million more.
Than the 4% that you already put in.
I've got estimates for 2023. We had wages and benefits budgeted at 21,038,000 roughly. And taking that number and extrapolating it to a 4.9%, it's about just a little bit over $22 million for total wages and benefits. That's including benefits. We're anticipating an increase for health insurance as well. Got a placeholder in here on my estimates for my formulas of about 4.25%. So that's wages and benefits is what that cost is going to be roughly. We don't have all of the figures in yet for health insurance, but these are just estimations right now.
Okay. Supervisor Scott Pease.
Is that minus the positions or are we equal in positions that we had?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't have those positions that have been eliminated for 2023 worked into this yet. But if you recall, the fiscal manager position in the sheriff's department that had transitioned to a records officer, I believe. So that's a lower pay grade there. And there were other positions as well. The human resources director position, we're working on that, but essentially that position's eliminated as well.
Supervisor Kubarski.
Seems to be that we're not quite ready to, I mean, if we don't have all the figures, why are we even? Is this something we were supposed to vote on today? Because if it is, we should have been better prepared and we could come in here and know what's what. And the other thing is the insurance, how much has that gone up? So that's a benefit. I mean, that's something if that all needs to come into play, I would suggest. And if the insurance is going up 9% or 10% or whatever it is, we need to know that as an increased benefit because we pay, I think, 85% of the insurance, I believe. I could
Mr.
be wrong
Chair.
on that.
Oh,
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, so this today is a direction. We have to be able to plug in a number that we think is realistic. So today is a direction. I let you know that it kind of started out at 4, but we didn't get direction from you to do that. We just kind of put it in there just to see if we're in the ballpark of being able to afford something. So we think that we can afford the 4.9. The insurance, we're being told we don't have final numbers yet, but the last meeting we had, which was recent, is a 9%. That's what I've written in my notes, 9%. And they were not really locked into that number. So it could go either way, but they felt pretty comfortable with the 9% increase in the insurance. So today is just to get a direction so that we can put together a good number, a draft number. But if we could put any number in there, but if you are not going to give us a direction, then we're putting in a lot of work. It is a lot of work for Carol to do that. So any percentage that we use, she's already put in the 4%. That was early on because we felt like we just needed to know we can afford something early on. But now, so right today, what we're looking is to get a direction, either 4%, which is already in there, or the 4.9, which matches the CPI. We're still behind from last year.
So yes, they're looking for a direction
Yes.
for us to vote on. Yes.
Well, I guess I would view it that, and especially this isn't a final thing, we can go up. But to go down, it's a lot more difficult. So that's one thing. What did our insurance go up last year?
I think it was a 0 last year, wasn't it, Kyle? Insurance increases last year?
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yes.
gonna pull up the spreadsheet and take
Okay.
a look here.
Mr. Chair, I'm thinking it's around 8%.
Last year.
We'll see.
But
I'm pretty sure. 8%'s in my head.
while he's looking at that, Finance Director Scott Pease, did you have another?
No, I agree with Bob. I think we should have some, at least pick 2 numbers out and have those numbers in front of us right now. I guess 2 question marks I kind of looked at that like, what is going on, you know? We're supposed to vote on something that we don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So what happened last year? I came to you to get direction and I said 4%, right? 4%, but it said could go higher, right? It got locked in. That's why. I came and said perhaps 6% and it got locked into 4 and then it was said, hey, you brought this up 4%. So I don't want to get locked into something. I want to have flexibility that if we can afford it, do we match CPI? Do we go a little bit higher? This is, you need to weigh in on this. The end result is, can we afford it? And is it sustainable in future? Because it just keeps growing. Whatever increase you give now just increases and keeps going up. But through attrition, evaluating positions, it's it's just shell game, if you will. There's an art to budget.
Supervisor Rick, please.
I listened to what Bob said, and we used to, in a couple of places I've sat on boards, we used to do a total package where the increase and the insurance were put in, so people knew what they're actually getting compared to CPI. And I know that boat kind of has sailed down the road because it's getting so high now. I worry that, kind of like you said, you lock it in because you gave 4% and that's what it remained. If we say 4.9, I think that's what people believe that it's gonna be. And like Bob says, I think it's harder to go down. If anything screams more of why we need a wage scale, this is the reason why we need a wage scale. I mean, we don't know what the other counties, we could kind of figure out what the other counties are giving, but when they start poaching our people in the next year, we'll know that we're way under. Or if people are all of a sudden our positions are suddenly getting full from other people, we'll know that we're a little bit higher than we should be. That's how come wage scales are really important to the county. I don't know what a good number is. I would probably go lower than 4.9 just because I think whatever number we start at, I think people believe that's gonna be at least what they're gonna get.
Just 1 second, Supervisor Taylor. I think Kyle had an answer on the health insurance last year.
Yep, Mr. Chair, health insurance increase last year is 5%.
Hmm.
And when we do the budget presentation, we actually put on there the dollar amount that employees would be impacted. Because 5% increase in health insurance doesn't necessarily mean that they're losing money when wages increased by 4%. Ultimately, I believe it's Cynthia's responsibility to be able to present a balanced budget for the county board. So whichever way this goes, we're going to work towards having a balanced budget for presentation to the board.
Okay. Supervisor Taylor.
So the way I'm looking at this, if insurance is gonna go up 9% and we're covering 85% of it, so we're gonna cover roughly 8%. Plus you're talking about a 4% cash raise. Isn't that essentially a 12% raise?
Well, it won't be 12% because the health insurance isn't dollar for dollar, but it is a percentage, but it might not be.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, the hypothetical situation I used for last year when we presented the 2023 budget. So an employee that makes roughly $40,000 in 2022, they would have a net annual increase of $1,437.04. So 5% increase on health insurance, 4% on wages, and they still received a net increase of roughly $1,400.
Okay. So I guess they're looking for direction from the committee. What's the committee
Mr. Chair,
want to do?
regarding these percentages, they've always upset me to the point that if we take a percentage increase for, well, I was gonna mention like a treasurer or clerk, but they're set separately. So let's take a different position, a department head. that 4%, 8%, whatever it is a heck of a lot more than somebody in maintenance, which they get the same percentage, but they get a lot less dollars, and they all share responsibilities in this courthouse or for this county. And again, going back to what Rick had said earlier, this wage study needs to happen because we're kind of shooting in the dark here. And I don't feel good about it.
Right, and we were hoping to be there this year, but with,
Got sidetracked.
Yeah.
And I understand why.
right. Right, and hopefully that could. It will be done for next year's budget, but,
We gotta hire one first.
right,
We haven't even got that far yet, but
Mr. Chair, how about, or I recommend this, how about a not to exceed number? Because then you're not really locking it into a 4, but just not to exceed, because when we get all the numbers settled, the big question is it affordable and is it sustainable?
Supervisor Taylor,
I think if we put a not to exceed number in, that's kind of, it's gonna be that number. I think if you're gonna put it in at 4%, put it in at 4%. If you're gonna put it at 4.9, put it at 4.9. I mean, I would recommend the 4%.
well, we're not looking for a recommendation, we're looking for a motion.
Okay, I'll make that a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Motion to go with 4%. Discussion on that? Okay, no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, noted. So the motion passes, so. You stay with the 4% now, I guess, you know, we get toward the end of the budget. I mean, you can always. When you have more solid numbers, I mean, you can always bring those back, so. So. Which which I mean, as we get down on the, go ahead, Supervisor Gabarski.
thank you. The positions, you've eliminated some positions, correct? And once that all fits in, you know, maybe we'll consider adjusting this number, but right now, again, we're shooting in the dark somewhat, and I feel a lot better if we had everything in front of us. So be my vote. Thanks.
And I would like to agree with what Bob just
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, we got more work out for it, you know. You guys have work for you, you know, in the next month and a half, right? So. Okay, next item is, yes, yes.
Have we ever thought, one of the things that just came up when people were talking was about how much somebody at the top gets 4% compared to how many on the bottom gets 4%. And that means the top always goes out farther than the bottom. Is there ever a chance that we would decide to put all that money in a pool at 4% and divide it equally among the whole staff? And then everybody, then that top and bottom don't start to separate themselves? Just an idea. It would eventually help the people at the bottom and keep check to people at the top. Just something I thought that maybe at some point we would entertain, or maybe not, maybe that's just the way we want to go about it. Just an idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know when the Counties Association, when Forward Ad Analytics was putting stuff together last year, and Dale Knapp from County Association was putting that back. I mean, you saw bigger growth between the lower wages to get people in. So they were seeing more like a 10% increase and the people at the upper side. But yeah, how do you? I mean, that's what we were hoping the wage study would get us realigned with, and that's what you might see, but. Yeah, I mean,
But the wage scale might take care of that also,
Right, but that we don't, yeah.
but we don't know what that is.
One other thing that we ran into, and that had to do in the law enforcement department where I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this, but some of those that weren't top dog was getting a comparable wage to the top dog. And if we end up with that scenario, that's in a no-win for virtually everybody. So, except for the one that's getting it.
Yeah.
What person do it, okay?
So, yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, reclassification of land conservationist to county conservationist. Who's gonna handle this?
Mr. Chair, I'll
Okay.
begin. So typically with a reclassification, I'm looking at the the personnel manual. The process is to first, if there's consideration, is to work with the department head. I'm within my authority then to, as the county manager, changing a job description and also changing a job title. So that process was started. This is a 2-month process into looking at this. We've been working with Land and Water for a little while now since the director left a couple of years ago. So it's just been sort of and then I met with the staff. There seems to be a need to have a centralized communication. So this is where the conservationist position comes in at this level. So the next step in this process, first, okay, so department head and I work together on this. It gets presented to like HR. Well, we don't have HR. Things are being transitioned right now. So anyway, so in this process, typically when there's a reclassification, there's 2 scenarios. A reclassification that might require a budget amendment. So reclassification means you're moving up from one paid level to a higher paid level. And if you have the budget, all is well. Okay, so that was sort of like a simple communication. That's this memo that would come to Admin Phi. When there's a budget amendment needed, so we had that with the finance department with our fiscal lead. We didn't have the budget, so we had to do a budget amendment. It was part of a big monster of a whole bunch of positions, if you recall. That was a budget amendment. That is in the form of a resolution then. Budget amendments have to be resolutions. Resolutions then get approved by Admin Phi and then move up to the board. Those are the 2 distinct differences. There's a D class also, right? So if there's a D class, the same thing happens. Pretty much that's a savings. You're going to declass a position to a lower pay. What happened in this process? A piece was skipped. A piece was skipped in the process. The part that was skipped. Well, let me just explain what happened. Job description change, title change. It went to McGrath to get, hey, is this going to be classified in the right thing? It was going from a 10 to a 9. McGrath signs off, get the confirmation. The next step should have been to come to Admin Phi. The position was posted before coming here. This position they don't take their seat until, I'm trying to think, what is it, September the 12th? September 12th. So this got me up in the middle of the night when this didn't go to Admin Phi. So here it is. Here's the memo. I'm just being honest about what happened. There was a process in that was skipped. And I'm going to take total blame for that because I could have caught it. Okay, whatever the reasons are, the buck stops here. I'm the reason ultimately that wasn't caught. So this takes care of it. It's you approving the reclass from a 10 to a 9. It should have been, it's pretty, had the normal process happened, I'm sure you would have signed off on it, but it's weird that this anomaly happened. Okay, it was an oversight. So I'm just admitting to it. And this kind of corrects it, and the Corporation Council can weigh in if he wishes, but the fact that you guys adopt this now or approve it, and then the position starts the 12th, we're good.
Supervisor Scott Pease.
Well, if you already told this person what they're gonna be making, how can you go back and say now you're gonna be making less?
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so they took that 9 entry, so it's like 20, hold on a minute, let me find it. $26.79, is that correct, Carol? Entry, okay. So if we're looking at the level 9, it's not up there, but it's an entry level of $26.79. The way the position stands right now, it's a 10. So you guys have given the county manager and HR the authority to bargain between the entry level and a 2-year. Does that sound familiar? Like the midpoint? So it falls within that, so it's fine either way. This just cleans it up. I'm just letting you know that the step in the process was missed. It should be the 9. It should be the entry level. That's what was agreed.
So the starting won't be the 2679, it'll be somewhere in between.
Okay, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if you guys approve this at the 9 reclassification, it's coming in at 2679. That's what they agreed to. That's what, they accepted. If you do not, and it stays in the 10, most likely we will have to do the 27 an hour, because that would be the 1-year rate. Because there is no 2679 in a grade 10. We have to go to the next highest. But they agreed at the 2679. It was a
So it's-
mishap, and I did.
So it's still coming in with the budget, but I mean, looking at the data there, I mean, the new structure would be more like it is on the screen right now, being the county conservationist would oversee the water specialist and the conservation, right? Instead of up above, where currently it would be more of a structure like that, where they're all in line, right? Correct.
Mr. Chair, what the new structure does, it improves communication. That was one of the biggest concerns I was getting from the staff at Land and Water, was they needed like a centralized communication point and someone that's able to give them direction as well. Then that person reports directly to the director of both areas. It makes sense.
Supervisor Kubarski?
So my concern is, will this eliminate this from happening again? This title change or whatever you call it?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So as you recall, that we're doing kind of like a transition period, assigning tasks from HR. There was, it was a process where things are now falling into place. And matter of fact, I met with Carol just this morning. I said, okay, so we're good. And we do have to update our personnel manual because it needs some help. It needs help in guidance, because where it gives us guidance on the reclassification, it just says it goes here, but in the form of what? A resolution? Does it come here as a form of a memo? I mean, it's left up to interpretation. A lot of stuff has to be cleaned up, but for now, yes, something like this is not going to be overseen. There's going to be more oversight in the process.
This may lead into another discussion at least, but as we view this, we're bringing in new employees, not at the minimum starting rate, but rather if they've got some experience, we certainly, you want to hire that experience. Well, all of a sudden this comes in at the 2-year rate or whatever else happens. So it seems to be more of this happening, as we're hiring different employees. I don't know. For me, as you look back at this stuff, like you said, it's got to be reworked, because we're dealing with some totally unknowns. And again, if you can hire someone that's good at their job, it's worth that extra. There's no
But this
doubt.
one will be coming in, if this is reclassed, it'll be coming in at the entry level, right?
Mhm.
Correct.
Mhm,
Which is below the 1-year rate of the lower classification.
mhm.
But my point was, John, that we are not sidestepping, but some of these rules are being pushed that we can hire good people, but we're not looking at, if it's 27 to 35, they're not coming in at 27. You're not going to get that experience on the low level. And so they can negotiate when we get all said and done and hire good people. I think that's what we ultimately want to have happen.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I could tell you that in the process of negotiating there, we do have a good tool. One thing that wasn't being looked at before, you would have somebody with, let's say, experience. Or let's start with education, right? They have more education than they do experience. There's an actual table out there I found that there's value given to people that actually have experience versus the education, and there's a formula. So this is something we're incorporating more and more into our analysis so that it isn't, decisions aren't being made in a silo, and we are able to defend our position if we're ever challenged, to rely on this data. But the intent is always to, when you have a vacancy, to get them to come in at the entry level. It should be attractive enough. That's why we had do wage studies, attractive enough at the entry level, knowing that in 6 months, there's a big bump in their pay. And then 6 months later, another bump to include CPI adjustment. So there's a lot of incentive to come in. And so, yes, the goal is to get them at the entry level because it does rise pretty quick in the process.
And jumping ahead a little bit on this whole deal, there's pressure right now that kids coming out of high school are being at least encouraged to go to a trade source or trade education versus a 4-year degree or 5-year degree or whatever, and simply because of the expenses that are involved. We're going to run into this down the road, or employers are going to run into this down the road when we've got all these education barriers and they're not, you're going to limit your pool on who you can actually hire. So I'm glad to hear about the experience having some impact on it. I'll be quiet now.
I guess what is committee's pleasure on the reclassification?
I'll move it.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
okay, motion by Supervisor Rick Pease, second by Supervisor Scott Pease to approve the reclassification of land conservationist to county conservationist. And I would assume the committee's aware of this, correct? The Land Conservation Committee is aware of this.
Yes, I got notice.
Okay. So, okay, any other discussion, questions? Supervisor Paler?
Was this discussed in land and water meeting?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there was a communication email that was sent out to the committee from Dusty, from the department head about the new hire.
But they were looking at this new hire. The committee's aware of the hiring,
Yeah.
the vacancy. And
Well, yeah, so they're aware of the vacancy, and then the communication was that this conservationist at this level was being hired to kind of oversee that land and water area.
okay. So, any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay. Motion is approved. Next meeting dates. Super Finance Director.
Mr. Chair, on the budget timeline, I believe it's October 6th.
Is there any need to meet before then? No, I don't. Not that I'm aware of right now. Just knowing that they need to get the budget ready by the end of October, right? And we're meeting, right? We're meeting still in early November and then voting on it the next month, right? Or on the actual meeting date?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So October 6th is the budget presentation to Administrative and Finance Committee. October 17th is the county board meeting. The budget presentation is going to happen that county board that night. October 18th is Administrative and Finance Committee meeting to finalize the proposed budget. That's where we'll have the resolution presented. And all of these timelines are to meet statutory requirements so we can get it posted in the paper by October 25th. And then November 9th, which is a Thursday, is the budget hearing at 6 p.m.
(9 o'clock) on October 6th. Okay. And we have the 18th, October 6th, Friday. It does work for me. Got tailgate that night in Watoma if you want to go to a tailgate. But AF won't be playing Mighty Hornets because they played the Mighty Hornets last week on Friday. And then the 18th looks like it's fine too, so. Then what's the other dates?
October 17th, county board.
Yeah, it was just October 6th and 18th for admin and finance in October is what I have down.
Then November 9th is the hearing.
Okay. Okay. So at 9 o'clock, October 6th, okay? Yep. Okay. Otherwise, nothing else. I declare the meeting adjourned. So thank you.